Hi all, this is Daniel Danger and I'm here to run you through my new print, To All That Come to This Happy Place. So I actually mocked this print up a couple years ago, but it never sort of found its way to the top of the to-do list until recently. I had been working on it for the last month and a half or so, and I'd actually planned to save the release for a huge solo show that I was working on in May, but with the coronavirus situation, that show is now gone, along with everything else on my calendar for the next 6 months, really. Every event and convention and all my client work just went up in smoke. Live Nation canceled all of their tours, so all of us gig poster artists and print artists are kind of scrambling at the moment. When I saw Disneyland was closing for the fourth time ever, and the first time closing for more than a day, and also looking at the financial hand I had just been dealt, I figured I should release the print early and start moving forward and working on trying to figure out what the next 6 months were going to look like for me. So here we are. This Cinderella's castle is primarily based on the Orlando park, but contains sort of motifs and aesthetics of the construction photos of the 1954 building of the Anaheim Park Castle, and then everything up front is sort of improvised. I wanted to sort of visually exist somewhere between being destroyed and being rebuilt. There's this great quote from Walt Disney that Disneyland will never be completed. It will continue to grow as long as there is imagination left in the world. It features the famous partner statue in place of my typical lone, isolated figures, which is kind of fun. When my wife and I went to California last, there was some sort of police standoff near our hotel, so there was a helicopter hovering above us for much of the day, and so that kind of found its way into the piece as well. And I think that helps with selling this kind of grander than reality scale. I tried not to feel too beholden to accuracy of the real castle with this one because the park already employs so much visual trickery and forced perspective that ultimately I just did whatever I thought looked visually right and interesting and fun, even if architecturally it made zero sense, and very little of this makes sense. The Disney parks are insanely clever in how they make you never question the actual size and distance of literally everything you're looking at. It's incredible. So ultimately this piece is a 10 color 24 by 36 inch screen print. The sky makes up the first 4 colors. It's sort of this painterly build up from light to dark, done with these custom brushes I've been kind of making for clouds and such. This is a lot more work than I've ever put into clouds, but I think it works really nicely. First up is an orange flood layer, that's just the base color. Then sort of a tangerine red-orange, which pops out the sky highlights. Next is a reddish purple, which more defined cloud shadows as well as the helicopter in the sky. Then a darker red purple with the darkest cloud shadows, and then sort of a loose shape of the whole structure. The structure is actually going to get covered up, so really this whole building form isn't actually doing much. Arguably it's just excess ink and maybe I should just remove it. Next up is the actual hard outline of the building in a rich straight purple. This is the base color for everything that's going to come. Then a mid-blue layer for some of the highlights and lighting of the building, as the light source is, I guess, off to the right side. Then comes a light lavender for the brightest highlight, which is actually not that bright, but lavender rules and it's worth having that little extra lighting pop, even if it will literally add like $500 or $600 to the printing cost. It's on the clock, Walt and Mickey, and some of the boards and railings in the foreground, and the top of the ambulance, which helps punch that part of the illustration more to the foreground rather than blending into the construction stuff behind it. Next is a darker purple that has a lot of the structural forms cut out and all of the roof shingles that were cut out of this layer as well. You'll notice how it locks into the area around the clock and gives all this kind of fun dimension to the shadows. This is where some of the brighter open wall panels get their definition as well from the side lighting. Then comes a transparent deep dark purple, which is the main line work. This is printed at about 70% transparency. This is the most of the visual information and detail, but a lot of those earlier layers is really what makes this come together and work, as on its own this layer is not that dynamic looking in regards to lighting. It's pretty much just straight kind of information. And finally, trapped into the main line work and pulled back a few pixels is the darkest shadows and textural splattering and all the little subtle details. As I've said in other videos, letting the line work soften into the layers beneath by being somewhat transparent, and then punching in this textural layer that's really only reserved for the darkest shadows, to me gives this really nice warmth and softness that's not really found a lot in like reductive etching style illustrations. This layer really sort of pieces the whole piece together for me. And that's really it. The first edition of this print is available in my web store right now, and picking one up will greatly help myself and my family in this particularly weird time, as my wife and I are both small business owners directly affected by the current state of things. I'll note there's a plan in action for a fun artist collab version of this print down the line, but the event that was for is probably not happening, so you may see that sooner rather than later as well. All right, thanks everyone. Bye.